Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm doing my monthly wrap up and I read 11 books for this month and I thought I wouldn't do more than 10 to be honest. And surprisingly, I stuck pretty much nearly to all of my September TBR, and I posted a video on it, actually all the books that I wanted to read for the month, and I did pretty well. I think I didn't read like 2 or 3 books from that list. So it really wasn't that bad. It was one of my favorite ones because I did find a 5-star book. I know. Let's all clap. Now the first book that I read is Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell, and her books I'm a little torn because I'm not sure if I love them or I hate them, but I still a little bit on the fence and I want to read a lot of her books to kind of like decide on it. This one I felt it was very predictable, I guess, from the beginning of what is really going to happen, but I still loved the book. I still liked the story. It was intriguing to see how it all is going to wrap up because there's 3 point of views happening at the same time kind of, and that's the second book that I read of Lisa Jewell, and it's like a pattern. In the other book that I read, was it The Family Upstairs? I don't know, but in that book there were 3 point of views happening as well at the same time, like by 3 different people, and you later on find out how they're all connected to one another. And it's the same thing with this book, but it's a thriller, suspense and psychological fiction. So for that reason I did give it 3.5 stars. Like I kind of wanted a little bit more from the book. If I didn't guess the plot, it would have been 4 stars definitely. It's fast enough I feel like, or at least it's medium paced, but read your trigger warnings because like there's cheating, there's betrayal, and then there's SA as well. And the plot of the book is one of the neighbors who lived across from the Forrest family, who the whole book is kind of focused about, and his life starts to fall apart. So Kate Ford is a physiotherapist and then her husband is a child psychologist, and you do get Kate's point of view and Owen, who is the neighbor who lives across from them, and also you get the point of view of the main girl who goes missing. And all of these point of views, you're kind of like not sure what happened to the girl, and is she alive, is she dead, like what is happening? Especially because Owen is the last person who gets to see the girl. Now the next book that I read is Anatomy, a love story, and I kind of got it a bit mixed up because there's a difference between a love story and a romance book. A romance book is really, you see this romance between the characters, right? And then a love story, it's like Romeo and Juliet kind of love story. So it can be basically a relation between these 2 people and how they get together, and they might as well get together on the very last page or find their feelings or something like that. Like they could die, like that's the difference. And I went into it thinking it's gonna be a romance book. It's not. But I gave it 3.25 stars. Like I wasn't there in 3.5, I think. I thought it was alright, but it just wasn't one of my favorite books, and that's okay. Somebody else might love it, just I didn't think it was kind of my book. But it's Friends to Lovers, and on the very last chapter you get his point of view. That last chapter was very much needed, but it does leave you a bit on a cliffhanger because you're not sure what exactly is going to happen later on, so I didn't really like that. But I know there's a second book, so I more than likely will be reading the second book. It's a historical fiction and with mystery on like the main thing. Obviously love story, but I felt like it took me a little while to get into the book, and it's set in Edinburgh 1817, which is like kind of gothic. And the whole plot was about Hazel, who wants to become a surgeon more than anything. And back in 1817, like girls could not be surgeons. Girls like had to marry and they had to settle down, they had to have kids, and she wants to have more for her. She wants to be a surgeon more than anything else. And so she studies and she attends lectures disguised as a man. Obviously you will have to see how it kind of ends up, but there's a little bit of a fantasy element. So she does make an arrangement with one of the professors, and so if she passes the test without attending the lectures, she'd be able to take his apprenticeship kind of thing. And so her main logical thing is to practice on bodies, and that's where the term body snatchers come in, because she befriends this acquaintance that helps to dig up bodies in graveyard and basically brings them to her. Like, she pays him and it's like a deal that they make, so it's a win-win kind of situation for each of them. But it was definitely perfect for like the spooky season. Like, I did enjoy that part, but if I read it in any other month, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. Then the next book that I read is Kingdom of the Wicked, and I actually really wanted to love this book. So it's a fantasy book focusing on 7 princes of hell. I actually ended up googling by the end of the book of who the 7 princes of hell are, and you actually get to see which one of them is like Satan, and then which one of them is like, you know, they're like fallen angels or something like that. But the main character, Emilia, her sister gets murdered brutally, and so she makes a deal with Prince of Wrath, and it's a win-win for both of them to find out who exactly is murdering these witches, because like that's what's happening. So I did want it a little bit more on the romance side of it. Like, I know there's a mystery going on as the main plot. So I gave it 3.25, maybe 3.5. It's somewhere in that kind of area. It wasn't quite at 4 stars for me. It's forbidden love, it's damsel in distress kind of vibe, and I loved the damsel in distress kind of vibe. Now the next book that I read is Guild by Raven Kennedy. It's a romance and fantasy fiction, and it's basically on the main girl, Oren. Gave me massive Tamlin vibes. If you read Akatar, then you know. And I love the plot twists in it, that they were good, but it kind of felt like it was dragging out a little bit, and it just was very slow paced for me. The whole concept seemed very intriguing if you think about it. So it's this girl who is covered in gold, and I don't mean like she just painted gold, like she belongs to her king, King Midas, and Midas's power is basically anything that he touches, it turns into gold. And so he keeps her into this golden cage, and so he seemed to have made her into like a golden girl, and he just doesn't want her to be touched by anyone else. He just doesn't want her to interact with any of the royal saddles, and that's the whole book about, these saddles. And it's literally what it sounds like. It's the king can ride his saddles. Which I thought that was so funny. I like that relationship between the king and Aaron that I saw, and it's like this friendship that they had. They were friends. He rescued her before he brought her back to the castle, and you can definitely feel that there's some sort of love or just something between them. There's a bond, and I really like that. I gave it 3.75. Not quite that 4-star feeling, but I'm definitely excited to follow the series. Now the next book that I read, I actually really like this one. It's Family of Liars, and if you read the first book in the series, which was We Were Liars, so it's a historical fiction, and one of the other tropes, if you read the first book you would know what the book really will be about, and I don't want to destroy for anyone who hasn't read the first book, just in case. But I actually prefer the second book over the first book. The first book, the ending, like everything went fine until the ending, and it completely threw me off. It's basically Daisy Darker vibes, if you read that, and I really liked Daisy Darker. And one thing I will say, this family should have their middle name as Tragedy, because tragedy kept happening pretty much so often that like you were like, oh okay, like another tragedy. So it follows the story of Sinclair family and every summer that they spend on this private island that they have. They're kind of a rich family, and the main character's cousin, Yardley, she came that summer with her boyfriend or with his two other friends, and it's the friendships you see, the love that you see, the betrayal, there's mystery vibes happening. There's just a lot happening in the book, and I read it I think in like a day or two. I just couldn't put it down. It was so good, and I gave it 4 stars. Now let's get to my 5-star read of the month, and it's Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Because I'm not. Now I've seen this book actually going around everywhere on TikTok, Instagram. Like I saw this book being hyped up, and I haven't seen a single bad review about it. Like it was always in like the 4-star or 5-star kind of area. There are trigger warnings for it, so maybe just keep an eye out on them. I didn't think there's anything like too gruesome, maybe there are too many dark romances, but it just wasn't anything that I was, you know, cringing at or thinking, oh my god, this is just so gruesome. Like I don't remember, at least. And it's a dual point of view on Johnny and Shannon. I just absolutely loved it because like I live in Ireland, and all the Irish mannerisms, the scenes and everything, like the way that it's written, it's so much banter, it's just funny, and my heart ached for the characters, and I just genuinely felt like I knew all of these people and almost like I'd be friends with them. And you know, I just absolutely love the book, and it's a slow-paced romance book. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I actually loved it so much. Now Johnny is a rugby player, and all he ever wanted to do since he was small, all he ever remembered was wanting to be a rugby player. And so he's playing for the country, and like he's, you know, going far with his career. Actually it's set in school, for anybody who's wondering. It's set in secondary school, so high school for anyone who doesn't know what secondary school means. And they're kind of teenagers, like 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and that, like, everything changed for him when he met Shannon. And so she's this very shy, keeping to herself kind of girl. Her life is full of problems, troubles. She's very opposite to Johnny now, and they come from different kind of lifestyles. So he's more on the richer side, she's more on the poorer side, but he's very set on protecting her, on helping her, and I just love that. It's like total damsel in distress kind of vibe. Now the next book that I read is The Woods by Highland Fling, and I love his books. This one was a 4-star read for me. That's a no-brainer. I love his books. They're very, I feel like nothing too gruesome in his books. Like it's very different kind of vibe from, you know, Alice Feeney, Lisa Jewell kind of books. They're more on gruesome kind of. If you read any of these authors, you would know what I mean. But Highland Fling's books are very storytelling, very interesting, very intriguing, kind of like they're all intriguing. Oh my god. But it's not just a thriller, it's an actual mystery, which I mean all the thrillers are. Oh my god. What I mean is, like, there's so many questions happening, and he just dots all the I's and crosses all the T's. Like by the end of it, just reveals everything, all the cards, and it just really makes sense. And there's me trying to brainstorm what really is happening. There hasn't been a single book that I read of his that I was just like, you know what, yeah, I know where this is going, yeah, I guess the plot. Like, no, it's not the case at all. But 20 years ago, in the woods on the summer camp, 4 teenagers disappeared. One of them so happened to be the sister of the main character. And 20 years down the line, when the main character has grown up, he's in his 30s, he has a life, he has a career and everything, and things start to happen again in relation to that summer camp. and interesting revelations start to reveal, and so he's very determined to kind of find out what exactly happened 20 years ago. Now on to a fantasy book, and this was actually one of my favorite ones that I read in a while. So it's called Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I gave it 4.25 stars at the time, but I feel like it's a 4.5 star book. It wasn't there quite in the 5-star, but it's enemies to lovers, revenge, forbidden love, what else? Afraid to commit. So the plot is these 6 very dangerous criminals team up for one impossible heist, and I loved the bond and the friendship that they formed with one another, the banter. I just really liked it. By the end of it, I just didn't want the book to end, to be honest. Like, I absolutely adored it. It's one of my favorites, if not my favorite Leigh Bardugo book. So it's set in Grishaverse, so you definitely, I feel like, oh, it's a suggestion anyways to read Shadow and Bone series. It's a trilogy, and then you go on to Six of Crows duology, and then you will go on to Kings of Scar duology. So it's quite a bit of the books in the Grishaverse, but I do think they're just so worth it. I loved the Shadow and Bone series. Now the next book that I read is The Italian Girl, and this one actually my auntie bought it for me, and I'm absolutely so grateful for it. But I've never read anything by Lucinda Riley, and the writing or the foil of it starts to come off, and I will say it's a pretty big book. It was like 572 pages or something like that. It's a big book for a romance book, and this one was kind of more of an old school white romance book. It wasn't anything like I didn't feel like there was any spice in it really. On the cover it says An Obsessive Love, which it really was, but you see this obsessive love between these 2 characters, of how destructible their love is and how it affects every single person around them, and you're not sure, are you rooting for them or are you not? Are they going to change themselves, like to be better versions of themselves, or like what is really going to happen? But this book kind of did throw me off, because like there was quite a lot in the book. Like there were, you know, couple people died, a couple people had kids. Like it just follows the story of a girl when she was 11 years old, and she sings at her love interest's parents' anniversary. So there is definitely an age gap between them, and she discovers then at that party that she has this very stunning, beautiful voice. And so Roberto, who is the love interest, he gives her his teacher, or his music teacher's details for her to attend music classes and to improve so she can become a opera singer like himself. And so the story does follow like years down the line, and when she's 17 years old she attends college or school, and so then she meets years down the line Roberto again. They kind of start to become more intertwined in one another's lives, with both of them becoming opera singers, and it just felt a very realistic story in my eyes. And the writing wasn't my favorite, but I do appreciate what the author was doing with the book. It just really intrigued me how the book would end, and at one point there, like, I didn't like characters because they were just being so egoistical, so deceitful, you know, secrets were being kept and secrets were being revealed. Well, definitely all the answers were answered, and all the questions and everything just by the end of it, and so the end kind of made sense. But I just thought it was a little bit too long for my preference for what it was, and it definitely felt a little bit more of a love story instead of a romance book. So for that I did give it 4 stars. I thought it was definitely good, but it just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but I did like the story. Now the next book that I read is The Highland Fling, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Now Megan Quinn, I really like her books. I like her writing style. I do think she writes her books with a lot of banter, with a lot of, you know, grumpy versus sunshine kind of vibe, and this is what the book was. It's focused on Jewel point of view, Bonnie and Rowan, and so the main character decides to move to Scotland. So she's American, and so she drags her bestie with her, and you know, it's a small town and she's looking for this purpose in her life. And so the job that they're applying for is to run a small business, like a cafe, and I just found this so entertaining. It's an age gap and kind of friends to lovers as well, but it's Grump versus Sunshine. And then last but not least, I read The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith, and it's the first book that I read of hers. I honestly, the first page, just please read your trigger warnings, because me going into the book blindly, I didn't realize what this will be about. On the back of the book it doesn't really say, but on the first page it's SA, and my heart was breaking reading through that kind of page. And there's flashbacks of course in the book, and it's just very tough kind of read, I felt like, at moments. Not all of it, but it's just like very hopeful kind of book, and it focuses on a girl called Eden, and I don't remember, was she 12 years old? No, and she was 14 years old. So it's full of trauma, full of second chance, small town kind of vibe. But my heart definitely broke down for her, and she really badly wants to rewind back time and have a do-over for that night what happened. She wants to lock her doors, she just wants to not have experienced that. So her whole life starts to fall apart. She doesn't know how to cope. She thinks she doesn't need any friends. Her relationship with her parents actually isn't the best. Like, they're very they don't really listen or pay much attention to her. I didn't feel like they were kind of respecting her and treating her like a little child. And then she had a great relationship with her brother, but then when he went to college, there was this wedge between them. I found it's just such a beautiful story, and at times I felt like that's not how a 15-year-old would have spoken to anyone, because some of the things that she was saying, they were very harsh, just very not being the best friend that she could be. And I completely understand, because she went through this experience, this awful experience, but it was pretty much nearly perfect in my eyes, and I'm so tempted to give it 5 stars. Like, I'm still on the debate if it's a 5-star book for me, but it's definitely a 4.75-star book for me. And with time I might change it to 5 stars, but it's so good, and such an important read. I feel like everyone should read it. Yeah, but that's all the books I read for the month of September, and let me know what books you read or what books I should read next if you have any recommendations. I'm always looking for some new books to read, but we'll see how October will go. And I'm definitely super happy with 11 books. Like, it's such a good month of reading. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!